lot of these harmful algal bloom species are actually always kind of here in the background. And so that's important to know because they're part of the natural assemblage, and you can't target them and just get rid of them and keep the other phytoplankton that you want. But it's about making sure they stay in check. The Central Coast Wetlands Group, CCWG here at Moss Landing, they look at wetland restoration in order to slow down nutrients that come from agricultural runoff and otherwise land runoff. Nutrients are like a buffet for phytoplankton. So looking at it holistically and working with all avenues of where nutrients might be coming from and being able to reduce that is really important.
"30 years ago, the Central Coast Wetlands Group took it upon itself to adopt the Morro Coho Slough watershed. The Morro Coho Slough had high amounts of nutrients running off of the agricultural lands located here, and that was showing up both in the monitoring locations within the slough and offshore in the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. As part of our restoration efforts here in the Morro Coho Slough, we have implemented over 14 conservation and restoration projects. Before restoring the treatment wetland, this is what the landscape looked like. After restoration, you can see we have quite a nice wetland habitat here. We're treating water, but we're also providing habitat for the local flora and fauna. All of these treatment wetlands collectively treat the water and reduce nutrients going into the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. This, in effect, can potentially reduce the amount of harmful algal blooms that occur here on the Central Coast.
In our area, the two harmful algal blooms we get most often are Pseudonychia with domoic acid poisoning or Alexandrium with saxitoxin. And so Pseudonychia is probably the most well known, and it produces a compound called domoic acid, which causes amnesic shellfish poisoning. And so literally it attacks part of your brain, and one of the symptoms in both humans and, say, sea lions is that you lose your short-term memory and you get disoriented. Usually we get one or the other, and this last year we had both at the same time, which is of concern. So when we have harmful algal blooms around, there's several monitoring programs. Here at the university and at the Seymour Center, we're measuring about once a week at the Santa Cruz Wharf, and we also have instruments that are measuring all the time, and that gives us an idea of what phytoplankton are there. We measure several things. One of them is we're collecting mussels. We have another method called solid phase absorption toxin tracking, or SPAT. And it's kind of like an artificial mussel. We just put it in the water and it passively picks up whatever chemicals are in the water. And the last thing that we do every week is we do what's called a net tow, where we're literally pulling this net through the water and getting a concentrated sample of the phytoplankton. We bring that back and take a look at that. One of the things we're looking for are potentially toxic algae, but we're also just looking at the entire community. One of the things that we're really excited about is there's a whole collaborative network here in California. And so our nearest partners are down in Monterey. They sample at the Monterey Commercial Wharf. They're sampling many of the same things that we are. And so they're looking at the phytoplankton, they're looking at the toxins. And it's really valuable because even though it's 30 miles away by car, the ocean can be very different on one side of the bay versus the other side of the bay. I'm an oceanographer, and I can't imagine being an oceanographer and not being concerned about the direction that the oceans are going. I'm really interested in making things better, and one way to do that is to understand why we have harmful algal blooms and what we can do about that. The state has been working with the farmers for many years now, and they've greatly reduced the nutrient load. So here in Monterey Bay, we're actually really clean. I've got two kids that have grown up in Santa Cruz, and I just can't imagine a better place to live. And one of the reasons I really like it is people are just so in tune with the ocean and the environment here.